This episode of MMPQB is brought to you by Unleashed Music, the artist development company that specializes in helping artists and bands grow their communities through targeted promotion and marketing. Learn more at unleashedmusic.com. Before we get into today's episode, I also want to mention a petition I started on change.org. You can check it out at change.org/Wirtz Walkway. That's WURTS. The Wirtz Street Bridge, it's right near me. I used to use it every single day. Now it is closed, both to cars and to pedestrians. And it sucks. It's really messing things up, and there is no safe pedestrian route over the Rondout River without it. So my proposal is, if the bridge is too far gone to reopen for road use, then let's turn it into a pedestrian walkway. It'll be great, it'll be beautiful, it'll be an attraction, and it will be a much safer way to get from Kingston to Port Ewan or vice versa than walking along the side of 9W, which is a very fast highway that people like to speed on, and it just doesn't make any sense. There's no pedestrian infrastructure there. So check out the petition. If you follow me on any of my socials, you can see it linked there. But again, it's change.org/Wirtz Walkway, Wirtz spelled WURTS. Welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for listening for another week. I'm your host, MK. This was a really fun episode to record. Shlomo Franklin was my guest today. You should really check out his music wherever you can find it, including Spotify and whatever else you like to use instead of Spotify. But this was one of those episodes where we didn't actually pick a topic ahead of time. We just jumped in and started chatting, and the results are great. I had so much fun talking to Shlomo in this episode. So listen to hear about all of our opinions on Taylor Swift. We really go deep. Also, include weirdest places we've slept, worst nights in an Airbnb, all kinds of good stories. Thanks again to Shlomo for coming on. Enjoy the show. On the line with me this evening, a friend of mine from several years back now. We've known each other through the local Hudson Valley, upstate New York music scene. It's the very talented Shlomo Franklin. Welcome, Shlomo. Thanks for coming on.
Hello. How are you?
Good. It's nice to hear from you.
You too. I feel the same way.
Yeah. So how have things been going for you? This has become the traditional, weird, first awkward conversation at the beginning of every episode, because I feel like, it's the elephant in the room. How's your COVID life?
Things are okay, up and down. Things are good. I didn't sleep at all last night.
Really?
So I stayed actually up in your neck of the woods. I stayed in Hotel Woodstock.
Okay.
It was my gal's birthday, and I wanted to surprise her, and I wanted to find like a cute, wholesome hotel. They've got a clawfoot tub, and she loves clawfoot tubs, and they have a balcony with flowers, and you're overlooking town. It's right in the center, and it's really cute. So we arrived, lovely place. I met the owner, so I'm not going to say anything bad about it. It was absolutely, 5-star review for sure. Mm-hmm. But the place, it smells like an old building. It smells like mothballs and smells like all of our grandparents' places. And so we bought a candle. But then, so middle of the night, well, first of all, we're going to sleep, and there's one of those old school heaters. What do you call that, a radiator?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a radiator on one side of the bed, and it is boiling. I mean, it's pretty cold out. As you know, upstate, it's like 30 degrees in the morning. It's pretty cold. But this thing is going like it's, we're living in Alaska midwinter. So it's boiling hot. So we turn on the air conditioner. So, you sort of feel like a hot dog flipping from side to side. There's like a heater on one side, cold on the other. So that was a little crazy. And then about 4 a.m, I guess you guys do your garbage at like 4 a.m. So we hear a garbage truck just like throwing trash cans everywhere, picking up the dumpster. I think they were just doing it for fun. It was really loud, so I didn't sleep at all. But I'm happy. It was good. It was a fun time.
I mean, there's always, at least there's a story in it. You want to hear about my worst ever Airbnb experience?
Oh, please, we could do this the whole time. I mean, I have horror stories.
This could just be the podcast, yeah. So this was a couple of years ago now, in the middle of winter. My boyfriend and I went down to go to a party in the city. and we just needed a place to crash. We knew we were going to be out late partying. We just needed like somewhere to go sleep it off until the morning, and then we were going to go see a show the next day. We were going to go see St. Vincent. So, we wanted to get a little bit of sleep, right? So it was kind of like a last minute booking, and it was close to where the party was. So we were like, okay, this is fine. It was like it said it was like shared with the owner. And we're like on the way down to the city. We're in the car, and the guy calls me like outside of Airbnb. Like he calls me. And he's like, listen, there's other people staying in the place. Like, I rented together rooms. I'm going to go stay with my friend for the night. Don't worry about a thing, blah, blah, blah. Like, we had to go through this whole rigmarole to go meet up with him and get the keys to the place. Like, it was this whole fucking thing. So then we finally get in there, and, like, our room, such as it is, like, I mean, listen, I lived in New York City. I'm fine with, like, how sometimes the apartments are a little bit slapdash, like, not necessarily up to code. Like, I'm used to that shit. But our room was literally a closet. It was no bigger than the space that I'm currently in recording my podcast. There were no windows. There was a twin bed for the both of us. Actually, I think it was a single, not even a twin. And my boyfriend is a tall person, and I'm not.
He's a big handsome fella.
Yeah. Neither of us are like tiny elf people. So that was raising red flags. But we're like, okay, whatever. We just need a place to crash. We'll make do.
No.
But no windows, right? So we get back after the party. We're drunk. It's 3 a.m. or whatever. And there's a bunch of people just hanging out in the living room. And we're like, okay, whatever.
You're just trying to get back to your broom closet there.
Exactly. We're like, we're just going to roll with this. Hey, everybody, we're going to bed. Goodbye. We go in the room. Obviously, there's still a bunch of people outside, so we can't open the door to the room, which is a problem because the heat is cranking. Like, just like what you just mentioned, like the heat was cranking. We had no way of controlling it. No windows in our closet. And we're just like smushed together on this single bed. And then there's a whole other thing about how in the morning we were supposed to check out by 10, and then the guy who owns the place by the way never actually left. He was hanging out with the other people in the living room all night. And he was in the bathroom like deep cleaning it and taking a shower from what I could tell until like 9:45, and we were like, we just want to take a shit and wash our faces and get out of here. And we were like stuck on this twin bed together, like just suffering with hangovers. Anyway, so yeah, that's my bad.
That's horrible. I get the feeling that he was sort of like, I should rent out this little crawl space here. But he doesn't sound like a seasoned sort of host.
I don't know what the situation was, like if anybody had ever stayed there. I mean, actually, no, because the reviews that I read had been good, which was why I was like, okay, this will be fine. It was all positive reviews about the place and the guy. So I don't know what happened, if we just like, if there was a situation where like, a different guy just met us at the door and was like, yeah, come stay at my apartment. I'm the Airbnb. Totally. So yeah,
I'll take your money.
I feel your pain on roasting in a hotel room all night. I'm sorry it wasn't the romantic getaway you were hoping for.
No, but thank you for that, and I'm sorry about your story. It's so funny how now it's just like a fun story about the time you went to see St. Vincent. But I would totally recommend. I would go back. It was super romantic. We had a lovely time. We drank coffee on the balcony and wave to everybody down below. You sort of feel like the Pope or the Queen of England when you're on a balcony, like looking down at the people.
Oh yeah.
So that it was very romantic, very lovely. The owners couldn't have been sweeter, and I would totally go back. It's fun when you have experiences that have sort of these hiccups. It's sort of realistic. It's not perfect, but you still have a great time. It doesn't ruin your time. It doesn't sort of cloud your vision of thing,
Totally. And yeah, like I have no problem with hiccups. I really don't. Like I am not, somebody who needs everything to be perfect or else the experience is ruined. And like, sometimes it makes things like, again, kind of a story or kind of like just more of an interesting experience than just like going to a resort and everything is what you expect. And, you go home after, a week of exactly what you thought it would be. Like, it's nice to have some curveballs sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And life is really one big hiccup, and we're just trying to get through it. So, yeah, you got to get good at that. And I've certainly, there's been times when, certainly times where that I'm less proud of, that sort of let it get to me. There have been other times like, I'll throw another horrible Airbnb story at you. So, I was in near San Francisco in California in this town called San Bruno. Showed up at an Airbnb. Now, you always, like, sort of like your story with the St. Vincent where the guy calls you. Like, there's always these little warning signs of like,
Yeah.
okay, this is not going to be smooth, you know? Okay, like buckle in. So I'm looking at the Airbnb and it says, it's in like small print, you know, I never read the full description. I never read the full description for anything. And, you know, to my, what's the word, deficit, to my, you know.
Detriment, yeah.
But, detriment, there it is, detriment. So, I ended up reading this thing after we booked it. I was with my gal, and it says showers. We have showers on the premises, but they cost $10.
Huh.
Now, bare minimum Airbnbs, we're talking $29 in Nowheresville, Maryland. Like, they're providing a shower. I don't care how little you're paying. So this is like a good warning sign. So we show up and knock on the door. A woman opens, and it's sort of this big floor, this big empty floor space, and all the way at the corner of the room, this big open room, is a table. And around this table is about a family of, I want to say, 15. I mean, they had their aunts, their uncles, their nephews, their third cousins. Everyone was over, and they're all eating, like, I don't know, dinner. And when we're just there, and she's like, okay, can you take your shoes off? We're like, oh, of course. I'll show you to your room, you know, and we just sort of scoot by, and everybody's like laughing, and dinner. It was another language, which was really cute and charming, but also where the heck are we?
Right, very good.
And so she takes us around the corner in through this hallway, and we come into the room, and in this room there's a kitchen, and in the kitchen there are more people. I don't know if they have the biggest family of all time, or it's maybe it's like a high school reunion. There's a million people here, and there's a kitchen, and it didn't feel like the full kitchen, but there was a kitchen, and there was a stove, and there were big pots or stuff. There's steam coming out. There's stuff boiling. I mean, it's a great party, but, you know, I think it would be more fun if maybe you were in their family and you were expecting it, not if you're just like after a long flight, trying to get some sleep, you know?
Yeah.
And mind you, this is like my first time to California, so I was like all excited. And so she goes, okay, here's your room. And we're still in this kitchen, and with people and pots and steam and, you know, lobster or whatever's going on there. She pulls open this giant curtain, and right there is a bed, a nightstand, a couple of complimentary water bottles, which I thought was very sweet, and a window. And she goes, okay, here's your room. And we go in, and she closes the curtain. And so we're sort of staring at each other in shock. Where are we? We're in the same room. I mean, there's like steam wafting from the pots, from the frying pan into like the pillowcase.
Yeah,
I mean,
a whole ass
it is
party
one
going
room. Insane. So we look at each other, we kind of laugh, we take some like hilarious photos, and we're like, we got to get out of here. And we were there because we're trying to be cheap, trying to be frugal, don't have a lot of money, trying to get by in San Francisco, and you know, we weren't even staying in San Francisco. That's how expensive it is. So we were staying outside San Francisco. It's cheaper. We're on this hill. It's pretty. It's fine. So we're like, we got to get out of here. So we literally just take our stuff. And because there's like 40 people in this house, they're all very, very excited about whatever they're up to. And you know, they're $10 showers. We're not even in our own room. There's a kitchen in our room. There's cooking in our room. So we get out. We walk out. And as we're like putting our shoes back on at the door, the lady comes up. She's like, "Oh, is everything okay?" And I just go, I'm just like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry. We were expecting something different. Don't worry about it." And we just like book it. We just throw down a bunch of money, get like $150 beautiful cottage right next to a pool, and we slept really well, and it was great. And the rest of the trip was awesome.
That is one thing that I've learned as I've gotten older is like sometimes you just got to spend the extra money. And like, listen, I understand sometimes you don't have it, but if you have it, it's worth it. It's worth it to me to be comfortable. And like, I learned that on my first like solo cross country trip where like I quickly was like, you know what? I'm not staying by myself in a seedy motel. I'm staying at the fucking Holiday Inn. I'm going to pay the $80. Like, it's fine. But I also feel like, and that story is hilarious and amazing, but I'm getting secondhand social anxiety just thinking about that situation. And I almost wonder like if I would have even like had the wherewithal to leave, or if I would have just done the like, okay, I guess this is fine, I'm just gonna be cool and leave as early tomorrow as I can. Like, was there a moment where you were like, should we just deal with this?
Yes, but I think that the steam just kept wafting through, and they're cooking all kinds of stuff that, mind you, smell delicious, but you don't want it to be in your, in your bed sheets, in your suitcase. I mean, it was coming through like crazy. It was like being in like a busy kitchen in a mediocre restaurant.
Yeah.
So it was quite unpleasant.
I mean, like you said, it sounds like a very charming scene, but just not one that you want to walk into when you're expecting like a quiet place to sleep.
Yeah. When you're on vacation. My grandfather, God rest his soul, used to say, cheap is expensive.
Yeah.
And I've learned that to be true. I mean, in this scenario, I ended up spending, we spent almost double because not only do we pay for this Airbnb, we also paid for a different one,
Totally.
Or it's like if you get yourself like a cheap pair of boots and then they wear out after 4 months, it's like, well, I should have gotten the more expensive boots. They'll last 2 years.
Exactly.
So
You're buying one pair of expensive boots every, 5 years instead of, 5 pairs of cheap boots every year or whatever it is. Yeah, there's I've read that analogy somewhere before. It's a very good analogy.
Yeah, I'm not a mathematician, but I think sometimes you gotta just... But it hurts. It hurts. You see that number, and you're like, oh, I know there's a cheaper option. You just want to be frugal. But sometimes you gotta... It's hard. You have to, like, listen to your gut. You have to know, like, okay, I'm traveling cross country. I'm gonna do the Holiday Inn. I want to feel safe and all that. But sometimes it is good to just be cheap and, have fun.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I guess
tough.
my personal comfort is something that I take more and more seriously the older I get. When I was younger, I was a little more inclined to like, okay, whatever, I can rough it a little bit. But like, these days I'm like, for example, the one bachelorette party I got to go to this summer, there was like a nice big house that we all split. And of course, everybody got COVID tested and all the good stuff. And it was, all very responsible and safe. But it was a big house. There was plenty of places to sleep, different beds and different bedrooms. But it would have been like in rooms with a bunch of different people. And like, they're all my friends, all girls that I love, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring a tent and I'm going to bring a shitload of blankets and I'm going to have a quiet place to crash at the end of the night because I just, I'm too old for a dorm. I just am. I'm a cranky old lady now. I'm 31 and I can't even imagine. I was watching like a show recently where there was a scene where characters were like sleeping dorm style and I was like, I can't fathom that. Like I cannot, I can't even picture being okay with sleeping in a room with like a dozen other people. Like fuck everything about that.
Do you think is it like a getting older thing?
I think I've always been like that. I think I always have been a little bit like that. But when I was younger, I was more inclined to like try to be more chill about things. And like I worked at Girl Scout camp and we had to like sleep that way, dorm style and like, the kids were right there or whatever. And it was okay in my early 20s, but yeah, I think I'm just learning what's important to me and being comfortable and sleeping by myself or with my partner alone in a comfortable bed is pretty big for me these days.
Yeah, and quit bragging. I mean, it's crazy how you hear stories about these musicians that are like, yeah, I toured around, just like in a van. I slept in the van. I slept under the bar every night, and there are people fighting. It's like, if I hear a little noise, I can't sleep. I'm such a, I don't know what it is, but it's fun because I've done, the touring that I have done, which compared to some of my friends is not a lot, but, I've always ended up finding like friends or people that put me up so well. I'm like, this is better than my home. I mean, this mattress is way better than my house. And I've taken my band on tour and they're like, this is the best we've ever had it. I'm like, I know, maybe it's because like I know generous people or like, but there's this one time I was touring and I stopped in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And Portsmouth, New Hampshire, if you've never been there, it's like a very idyllic town. It almost feels like when you're there, you're just like, oh my God, I want to have kids and send them to Little League or whatever. It's a very wholesome domestic town. Maybe, I mean, I showed up there and there was like a strawberry moon or something. It was like a rare red moon and you're overlooking the water into Maine. And there's all these like, these fishing boats coming in. And there was a play in the park. They were doing like some sort of Shakespeare. So it was quite a beautiful scene. But I had nowhere to sleep, and the musician I was touring with, we had nowhere to sleep. So, and for some reason, there's times, I don't know if it's faith or whatever it is, you just go, it's going to work out somehow. I don't think we're going to sleep in the car in a Walmart parking lot again. I think we're going to sleep well tonight. So we're walking down the street, and it's this beautiful cobblestone street in town. and we hear this voice coming, and there's someone busking, and he's got this old guitar, and he's singing these beautiful old folk songs. He's doing, Woody Guthrie and Leadbelly and lots of great old stuff, and he's playing a beautiful old Gibson guitar. But a young man, sort of like, I don't know, my age. He's like in his 20s, and we go up and we sort of listen to him, and we're carrying our instruments. So, after he does the song and we throw him a buck, he goes, where are you guys from? What are you doing here? And after, a few minutes of talking, he invites us over at his house. He's like, come over, I've got a fire pit, come and play some music. We'll jam after this. We're like, great. So he gives us his number, and I'm still not thinking like, okay, somewhere to sleep. I'm just like, great, that'll be fun. We'll go play some music with this stranger. I like his guitar. I want to play it. It's an old Gibson. So we call him up after, and he gives us an address. And I look on the map, and it's like he lives on an island off of New Hampshire. Like you literally cross the bridge and you go into Maine. And he lives in a little island in Maine with a road to it, but it's a pretty small island.
Yeah.
So we drive up there, and it's gorgeous. The sun's already gone down, but you could really feel your surroundings. It feels a million miles away from home, and super beautiful. We pull up at this gorgeous house, like a huge house. Those houses you pass and you go, who lives here? What do they do? Gorgeous house. And he comes out, and there's this brown poodle that comes running up to the car, and so he invites us in. It's just him and his brother. And he goes, yeah, my folks are away. They live in like the Jersey or whatever. And we're just here. We, I don't know, we give like boating lessons. So his whole like vibe and mystique of being this like ruddy, this rugged folk singer sort of diminishes. I'm like, okay, you teach like boys in boat shoes how to like, I don't know, go sailing or whatever. It was cute, And he brings us in. We're sitting around the campfire and we're trading songs. I remember he did a beautiful version of Bob Dylan. The album is Blood on the Tracks. The song is Meet Me in the Morning. He did a beautiful version of that song. It's just a great little blues song. I've never heard anyone play it, and he did a great job. I ended up actually bringing this guy into his studio, to my friend's studio in Beacon, New York, after to do a bunch of songs. But anyway, we sat around the campfire playing songs. It's me, my friend that I was touring with, and his brother, and and the dog, and that's it. No one's there. And he goes, where are you guys staying tonight? So we're like, we're just gonna sleep in the car. And he's like, oh, what are you talking about? I've got a whole, I have room here. Don't worry about it.
I have a whole mansion.
Yeah. So he literally, and I'm not exaggerating, he brings us to our own wing of the house. Like, it's not our own bedroom. Here's this wing of the house. Enjoy it. Go crazy. Again, the pillows are like pillows I've never slept on. We each get our own room. There's a jacuzzi. We shower. It is the best. We're living it up. It felt so nice. And it's one of those moments where, the stars align and you go, okay, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. I am doing the right thing. Because I don't even remember, but I'm sure the gigs weren't all too glorious,
Sure.
It was probably like in the corner of some cafe and some people looking annoyed, like, why are you guys here? So it was great. And we wake up in the morning, and the only thing he said, he's like, you got to be out by 10 a.m. My parents can't know you're here. I think they're coming up tomorrow. They can't know you're here. So we're like, okay, we'll be out of there by 10. And so we come downstairs in the morning, and we just see this guy, the plumber's crack? Mm-hmm. Like so all we see is a plumber's crack just on top of the sink, and we just go, oh shit. His dad's here. We're going to ruin the whole thing for him. He was nice to us. We're going to, now he's going to get a yelling at. So we go upstairs, and we like hide under the covers, freaking out. We're like, what's going on? And we're like, do we jump out of the window? I don't want to get him in trouble, But then we're like listening, and whenever you're that quiet, you're just listening. You hear everything, and you just hear a pickup truck going by and birds chirping. You hear everything. Anyway, long story short, the guy left, whoever it was, and we just slip right out, get into the car, put it in drive, fly away, the tires skid, there's leaves flying, we get out of there, get off the island of Maine, and it was a great time, and we slept really well that night.
So you made it out? No, you weren't caught?
No shotguns, no, they weren't really a shotgun type, but no one caught us, I don't think. And I've messaged him since then, and he didn't seem upset. So I think we're all good.
That's good. Yeah, yeah, it's so funny. Like when you just kind of are in the right place, right time, talk to the right person, and end up having this experience that you never would have expected to have. You can't plan that kind of thing.
No, you can't plan it. It was crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So you stayed in touch. He ended up coming down and recording some stuff with you.
I brought he was and I'm sure as a radio DJ you and a musician you've met a million of these people, or not a million, but sometimes you meet someone and they're so talented and they're so great, but they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And then you meet people that are doing it and you're like, oh well, you're kind of underwhelming, you know. But he was so great, so great. He just had such a natural way of singing, of playing his instrument. He played the guitar in a way where you go, oh, I gotta go relearn how to play guitar. I gotta get better. Beautiful, beautiful voice. He did this old Irish folk song. Oh man, it'll come to me later. But a great, great, like sort of a classic Irish folk song that Dylan's done, and I know Pete Seeger's got a version of it. But so I had him come down to my friend Keith in Beacon to do some recording, but. I think he was almost the least enthusiastic person in the room. It was almost like you're twisting his arm to come and record. So nothing ever came of it. Nothing ever came of those recordings. Huh. But I've heard them. They're beautiful, but I don't know.
Once again, it's time to talk about real estate. Maybe you have some that you want to sell, or maybe you're looking to buy some, or to move from one place to another. Maybe you're looking for that sweet little piece of upstate New York, and I know who can help you get it. Susan Barnett, licensed associate broker with Keller Williams Upstate Country Properties at 31 Main Street, Oneonta, New York. She's a member of the Otsego, Delaware Board of Realtors, as well as the New York State Multiple Listing Service. You can find her online at upstatecountryrealty.com. Check out all of the listings that she has on offer right now. There are some incredibly beautiful ones. I mean, if you dream of your farmhouse in the country with views of the rolling farmlands and cows across the street, she has got it for you. And we're talking about Delaware County, we're talking about Otsego County, we're talking about Dutchess, Greene, even some Ulster County out there that Susan can help you with. But I will say Ulster County, not the best value for your money right now. You want to be in Delaware and Greene counties if you're looking to buy a little piece of property in upstate New York, because you're just going to get so much more for your money. And it's just a little bit further west or a little bit further north. You're not going to experience traffic jams anymore unless you get stuck behind a tractor. Lots of great neighbors, arts, downstate influences, really great communities up there, fun stuff going on all the time. And plus the benefit of quiet nights, dark skies, tons of stars, and all the modern stuff you need. Fiber optic cable showing up even on country roads. So hit up Susan, get your dream property now, before they're all gone. That's Susan Barnett with Keller Williams Upstate Country Properties, upstatecountryrealty.com. Yeah, it's funny. You've got me thinking about all of those like serendipity moments and manifesting good things. And, I was a lot more woo in my early 20s, I think, where I was more about like manifestation and positive. I mean, I think there's a lot of science to positive thinking. I don't think it's all, just new age nonsense. Not that all new age stuff is nonsense.
No, sure. I'm completely with you. No,
but
yes.
You got me thinking about all of that stuff and just some of the opportunities that would pop up because I just was thinking positively. And unfortunately, there's a lot of like cynicism in me now because of just the world and everything in it over the last 10 years or so. It feels like there's this trend of just things getting worse instead of better. And, maybe I felt more able to be more optimistic and more open to things like that when I was younger because of that. But yeah, I don't know, because I feel like there's half of me that thinks that here's a story like the one you just told and thinks I should go out into the world and be more open to people and connect with people and take the opportunities and see where they go. And then there's the other half of me that's like, yeah, that's how you get murdered in an alley.
Yeah, there are two very different endings to that same story. I know it's very tough to there is part of sort of this faith and hope and optimism and the sense of like you said, woo woo, manifesting and just believing that is sort of, what's the term, like almost wasted on the youth. And part of it is just, the cultural narrative that we live in. And it's so tough because it's this thing where it's a dark cloud, and beyond that dark cloud there is sunlight, but the dark cloud is real and you have to reckon with. But you can't deal with it if it's just going to cripple you, and if you're not going to sort of help in any way. You can't have a bunch of people that are sort of exhausted because of the dark cloud. That like it's the toughest thing ever. But I think there is an element of it that's just youth. I mean, you got to ask yourself, like, how come? I don't know, why do all our favorite musicians, for the most part, their later albums stink, but their big famous albums are usually when they were young?
Totally.
What is it?
Shouldn't
they be getting better?
So many times. Every time there's an album, like just recently, I feel like I can name names because this is a band that I have no personal connection to. But I really liked Erasure, like some of their old stuff I really, really like. So recently their new album came out like a couple months ago, and I was like, let me give this new Erasure record a shot. Man, it sucked. It was just so bad. And yeah, I feel like that's usually the case more often than not, that like, artists that have been doing it for so long, you would think like you've learned so much, can't you apply that experience and make something new? But instead it just feels like they get stale.
Yeah, there's this innocence lost, I think, especially with songs. These writers have this innocence and this like raw invigoration and this sort of this entire youth that they just have to get off their chest, and they're like, all right, here it is, and then maybe they're able to go for another album, here it is, but eventually they're just like, here's what it's supposed to sound like. I don't know, it gets very convoluted. There's obviously been a few artists that have escaped that, John Prine being one of them, and maybe Leonard Cohen. For sure, Leonard Cohen. I mean, his posthumous album was great. I mean, an album he recorded and came out, just now after he died. So there have been a few exceptions, but yeah, I mean, you listen, you go, why? First of all, why are you still doing this? Like, who's buying your new record? Who's buying the new? Let's see, who do I want to throw under the bus? The new Who album is terrible. I mean, I love the Who. I've seen them live. The new Who album is awful. It's just bad. It sounds bad. Sonically, it's terrible, and the songs aren't interesting, and it's awkward. And I mean, I don't think they think that. I think they think it's beautiful. I hope they think it's the best thing they've ever done.
Unless it's completely cynical and it's really just a cash grab. But like, I want to believe better of the people behind it. Of the artists and all the people working on it. Like, that they wouldn't put out something that they didn't think was worth putting out. But yeah, I feel like it's pretty objective. Like, even the most diehard, even fans who are, their age, like the older generation who grew up loving them, I feel like still, I actually personally haven't heard the album, but I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that you're probably right that it sucks. Yeah, like it's pretty objective. Like, I'm thinking of Janelle Monáe as my current favorite example, because she's not old at all. She's a person in the prime of her life. But she was, I don't want to say she was a genius. She is still a genius. But like, her first couple of albums, the Arch Android and the EP that came with it, and then also I think the follow-up, the Electric Lady, those were mind-blowing albums. Like, those were so original and so, theatrical and symphonic and cinematic, and they were these sweeping concept albums. They had this story and this social commentary, and the way that they were done was so exciting and new. And I remember seeing her around 2009 or 8ish. She opened for Of Montreal, and I was like blown away by her, everything about the performance and the music. And it feels like everything she's done musically recently, including the Dirty Computer album that came out like 2 years ago, is like a lazy retread of that. It's not, it's like lazier songwriting and lazier production, while she is this much bigger star than she was back then, I'm sure way more money behind her. And if, she could do anything she wanted at this point. But instead, she's putting out work that I just feel like doesn't measure up to what she used to be putting out.
Yeah, I think when people become successful, they let go of that hunger because they're falling for the false idea that what they were after was this fame and the success. But in truth, what they're after is much deeper and is really something that you'll never fully grasp, you know, and for some reason, yeah, you see artists and you're like, you love their first album, their second album, and then they lose the hunger and there's something that's missing. And you go, wait, your budget's much better. You could play with the best musicians in the world. You could record in the best studios in the world. Why do you stink? Why is this album so boring? Where's, you know, like the first few Kanye albums, I'm not even a Kanye West fan. But when you listen to the first few albums, I forget the first one, but I don't know, College Dropout, all the way to like Twisted Dark Fantasy, there's so much hunger. I mean, he is just hungry. And there's this passion and this charm, this, you know, this crazy energy. And, you know, that's like the ingredient for all of our favorite artists, no matter who they are. If it's just someone in a dusty barn picking on an old guitar, whatever it is, if it's someone messing around with drum pads, like it's this hunger and this passion that for some reason some artists, they lose it after they either find success or after their first few albums. And so you just go to the few artists that maybe didn't lose that. You even look outside of your you know, your craft. I look at comedians because, you know, let's say take the biggest comic in the world, Jerry Seinfeld. At the end of the day, he's still trying so hard to be funny. He's still writing so many new jokes, and when he's, you know, at Gotham in the city working out some new material, he's still going to the new comics going like, hey, do you think that was good? What can I change around? He's so present in the moment, still hungry, trying to be funny. And he's not like, you know, laying on a bed of money being like, I have this huge TV show and I'm set for life. Comedians, I think, are, maybe it's because it takes them longer to make it, but I think, you know, a lot of the greatest comics like George Carlin, if you're going to see any of like a George Carlin clip come up on like, I don't know, Facebook, it's going to be from when he's got white hair. It's going to be from one of his later specials because he threw out his old material every year and he's like, I'm going to go write a whole new hour. And he did get better. And I guess because when you're a comic, you're constantly judging. You can't fake it. You can't fake laugh. Even if you love this comedian, it's very hard to fake laugh. Yeah. So I think they get this, like, they never lose that hunger to be great, and they never let go of being humbled. They never not get humbled by a joke that bombed and a set that just wasn't great. So you sort of got to look at all these people and go, okay, I want a little bit more of that, because I would love to still be great at 50, 60, 70, 80. I want to still be great.
Yeah.
I don't want to just do something cool in the next 2 years and then all downhill from there.
Totally. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, you got me thinking now, too, about, like, megastars. And I think two examples that just came to mind. This actually popped into my head because I saw somebody post something earlier, just like this stupid, you know, retweet that said Billy Joel stopped writing songs at 44 like a gentleman. Like,
yes,
which is like a funny thing to say, but you know what, maybe he hit a point where he was like, I don't have anything new to say, I'm just gonna play the shit I already wrote and make a bunch of money. And you know what, more respect to him for it, for knowing that limit.
Yeah, he might have written quite a few songs, but was self-aware enough to go, you know, these really aren't anything new, and they're not better than my old things. You know, the only artists I've ever seen survive and write new things have been artists that really switch things up, and sometimes to a point where they alienate part of their audience. But I think that's necessary. You know, and the most boring but true example is Dylan, because Bob Dylan has annoyed people like crazy about how much he's changed his style, he's changed up the songs. But he keeps writing, and I listened to his new album, False Prophet, and maybe I'm biased because I love him so much, but there's songs on there. I mean, there's one song, I've made up my mind, I'm gonna fall in love with you, or something. I've made up my mind to let myself fall in love with you, and it is such a romantic song. And he's late 70s, he's got his legend status, he's got his money, but somehow he's still able to go and write a great new song. Now, is he like at a point where he could have done this at the beginning of his career and he would have the same career? Absolutely not. Like, he still has that sort of like, you know, a lot of people aren't going to like it. But I do think he's sort of tricking himself enough, or putting himself enough into weird situations, that he still is at least bringing the authenticity. He's, you know, the songs are genuine.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think who else has done that.
I actually, this is this person is much, much younger than Bob Dylan, but perhaps no less famous. I think Taylor Swift deserves credit for continuing to evolve
Oh,
and continuing to keep it interesting. I mean, look at what she just did. Folklore was unlike anything else she's ever released, and it was fabulous.
yes. I think she realized, and this is a great wisdom that she had, first of all, probably at the age of 22 or whatever, and already successful, realized, okay, I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to go pop. I'm going to shed the sort of country, it's almost like what is it, a safety blanket or whatever. I'm going to shed this thing and I'm going to go pop. Maybe it was also, I want to still be hungry, but I've conquered this. I'm at every CMA awards.
Yeah.
And so maybe if I switch it up, I can conquer this now.
Totally.
And now I think she is, and I don't mean this in a bad way. I think she's trying to gain the respect of like the indie community. And she called up, Bon Iver and the National, and was like, okay, I want to do this album, and I want it to be a little bit quieter. But it still sounds like her throughout, and the songs are still great.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think it is hunger, and I think it's her own way of keeping herself hungry because, yeah, like she conquered pop country at a very early age, and she could have just settled back into that and continued to release country albums and become a 30-something big hair, big voice country singer. But she wasn't satisfied with that. She wanted to be a pop star, and now she wants to, and I think this is also a very natural thing for her because I also, I'm the same age as her, so maybe on some weird level I'm like, I understand her, and I'm sure I don't, but like in my weird head,
Sure.
I'm like, maybe this is part of her motivation that, she's growing, she's changing, she's not in her 20s anymore, she's in her 30s now, she's finally in a stable relationship for, the last few years that it seems like is going to last, and she's just kind of more in this just different zone, and the big production synthy pop songs just aren't what she feels like writing right now. And she wanted to experiment, she wanted to do something different, and as you said, the songs are still completely her, when you hear the way she turns a phrase or the melodies or the way she does things. But my understanding is that a lot of the music for the songs on Folklore were just things that Aaron, is it Dressner or Dressner?
I think Dressner, but I have no idea.
I think so too. But yeah, I think, I read some interview with him where he was like, yeah, I had all of these, songs sitting around that I hadn't finished. There were no lyrics or anything. They were just like, files on his computer. And when he started working with her, he sent her a bunch of them, and she would just send back a demo later that night. Like, okay, I wrote this over it. Like, most of them didn't change that much, from the original demos that she sent over to what they eventually recorded. I think she's just such a prolific songwriter, and people don't want to necessarily give her that credit. I mean, I could go on about Taylor Swift. I've become a very big fan over the last, 5-10 years. It's been a gradual downslide, but now I'm
extremely prolific,
Yeah.
extremely prolific, and constantly changes her stuff. And you could tell from that movie, what was it called, the thing on Netflix,
Miss Americana. I watched it twice.
Yes. Yes. So you could tell that at the end of the day, and she's got a huge team, and she experiences stardom like we can't even imagine. But on the one, in the same token, you are the same age of her as her. You're similar graduating class, let's say, and she is just there, bringing it on her own. She's sitting there trying to write another great song, trying to put together a turn of phrase, trying to write lyrics. She's not, she's writing them herself. Now, as a writer, I love writing, so I don't understand why anyone wouldn't, but if you do look at the blueprint for most pop stars, and it certainly stars on her level, they're going to get a ton of other writers that are just going to feed her lyrics, and she's going to put her voice to them, and that's it. It's still at the end of the day, after the huge stadium lights go down, it is about the songs and about the lyrics. And I think because she's somehow magically been able to keep it about this little truthful core, that she's still great. That's why she's still great. That's why she's still interesting. And probably also for herself, she's still somewhat sane. And she's still somewhat, grounded, and is still able to, connect to the muse and write songs.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, totally. And I also really, one thing that I like about her songwriting is how unself-conscious it is. There are some of her songs where there are lyrics that like make me cringe. Like they're just so over the top, like so overblown, so romantic. And I'm not even necessarily talking about like the early albums where she was a teenager writing this stuff. I mean, even like, the lyric that popped into my head was the secret track on Folklore, The Lakes, that was released as part of like the special edition or whatever. And there's like
Yes.
this line about, like my calamitous love and like some just these ridiculous like $10 words that it like she clearly was just like flipping through a
In a
thesaurus
dictionary.
yeah, she's like this one and this one and this one I'm gonna use these and like it's so like if I know that if that was my song that I wrote, I would not have sat with those lyrics as the final version, but she was like, fuck it, this is what I'm saying. And I love that about
there's
her.
this honor.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying I love that about her.
Same. I think she's figured out a certain core truth, and and it is going to make some of her songs a little bit cringier, or whether it makes it cheesier or not relatable enough, whatever it is. There are moments where I think she realizes, okay, I'm not going to compromise in this little place, and therefore I'm going to have enough of myself throughout this whole thing that I'll be able to handle all the scrutiny, all the criticism, all the paparazzi, all the pressure. So she's been able to do it. It's amazing. It's funny because first of all, if anyone is listening and they don't like Taylor Swift, that's fine. I respect that. However,
totally.
go listen to like, I don't know, I would send anyone to like Back to December. To me, that's an undeniable great song. You can't like songs and listen to Back to December and not love that song. But anyway, maybe you can, but I love that song. I grew up super, super religious, and we were not allowed to listen to female singers. Okay, this is, I growing up, there was no women singing ever. It was all men. It was all Jewish men singing, and as you can imagine, it wasn't all that interesting. It was a little bit, a little bit cheesy, a little bit ridiculous.
I mean, yeah, like not to bash anybody's religion, but like it sounds like a bummer.
Big time bummer, very, very unhealthy, and whatever. I could go on about how terrible that is. But so I didn't hear any female singing, but you'd be at a gas station, you hear something, I'm like, ooh, that sounds cool. So when I started getting older, when I was about, I don't know, I think I was like 12 years old or something, and I started, I was spending the summers on the farm spreading manure. And we got this new tractor that had like a full cab. When you see these tractors and it's like glass, it's sort of like an actual car,
yeah.
as opposed to the open cab ones. So it had like air conditioning and heating and a really comfortable seat, and it had a radio. So I spent my whole summer, and this is when maybe like Speak Now or one of those albums was huge, and it was all over country radio. And I'm there upstate in the Catskills on a field in the tractor, and it's like, what was that song? She Thinks My Tractor's Sexy. That's on the radio, and there's like some great Tim McGraw and all kinds of good stuff, and then Taylor Swift would come on, and my heart would just melt. First of all, I never heard girls singing growing up, and like I'm like, this is the best thing ever.
Oh yeah, your brain must have exploded.
This is so beautiful. It felt dangerous. I felt bad. I felt rebellious. I was like, oh yeah, I'm showing them. I'm listening to something I'm not supposed to be listening to. And at the end of the day, her songs were extremely comforting, whether it was like Mean or Innocent. I used to have these huge fights with my parents, or like someone about religion or whatever, and I would like just like go up to my room and like put on headphones and listen to like Innocent by Taylor Swift.
Man.
And like it's such a beautiful song. Like the groove in it is really great. And it's just like, you're innocent. And I'm like, yeah, I am. I'm not bad, but they're telling me I'm bad.
Wow.
And I'll listen to like Never Grow Up and all these beautiful, very, and then the romantic songs, forget about it. I mean, I would like dream about, oh my God, maybe I could have a girlfriend like Taylor Swift.
God, I can't.
Yeah,
you're making my heart happy right now, because Speak Now, I mean, I would make the argument that Speak Now is a perfect record.
Sure.
It's so fucking good, and yeah, like everything that you just said about all of those songs, there's not a bad song on the record. And I mean, your experience with it was so much more profound than mine. Mine was, I started listening to her around like the 1989 era was when I really started to pay attention. And it wasn't until like last year that I was like kind of digging deeper and discovered Speak Now and started listening to those songs a lot more. But Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine like how meaningful that must have been for you. And also like the whole thing about not being allowed to listen to female singers and then to, have Taylor Swift be one of the first female singers you really fall in love with. She has such a sweet voice, and especially around that era, she had this sweetness and I don't want to say innocence because like she's a human being and I'm sure she was doing her share of living on the side, but like she conveys this real sweetness and innocence in her voice in those early albums, and she can still do it. But when she was 22, it was really heartbreaking to hear sometimes. And some of her sadder songs, I mean, I still like every time I hear Dear John, I'm like, I cannot believe that motherfucker John Mayer like put his hands on that sweet 19-year-old girl. Like I'm just like, man, listen to this poor girl. But like it's also, not this poor girl. It's like this powerful little beast who wrote this, this big beautiful song just indicting him. Like, man, like I fucking love Taylor Swift. And like you said, anybody out there listening who doesn't, whatever, I'm not a person who thinks everybody has to like everything I like, but I will always.
Yeah, they tuned out a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. But I will always defend TSwift for sure.
Absolutely, great artist, and and what a treat that you got to like discover her, and then you get to go back and listen to these other albums. It's so cool when you discover an artist. Like every time, because I only have one album out, but I hope that in 10 albums from now, and whenever I find a certain amount of success, that someone can go back and listen to this album and find it then in a very like sort of honest way. Because like the truth is, when you put out an album, most people aren't hearing it right away. Mm-hmm. And certainly for all like the older acts that we love, we're listening to stuff they put out in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. So we're hearing them decades later. So it's the coolest thing what a treat that you got to like go back to these other albums and discover them that way, as opposed to like in the moment on the radio or whatever.
Oh yeah, no, it has been a complete treat. And I mean, even now I'm still kind of discovering her very early stuff, because that was like, I really didn't like her when she first came out, and she was mostly country, and she was this little, starlet. And I mentioned Girl Scout camp before. I was working there, and I think it must have been the Fearless album that was out then, because Love Story was the big one on the radio, and all of the girls at my Girl Scout camp were obsessed with it. And at the time, I was like, 21 myself at the time, and I was like, she's a bad role model. She's not a feminist. She just sings about boys. Like, you guys shouldn't be listening to this. And now I go back and I listen to that album and I'm like, no, she was a feminist. Like, it was always there. And
she was singing about her life. It was honest. She was singing about her life.
Exactly. She was singing about her life. She was, she's a girl. You can tell she very clearly is somebody who falls in love very deeply, very quickly. And, that's what she had big feelings about. So that's what she was writing about. And it wasn't all she was writing about, but like those were the songs that people really connected with. And those were the ones that became hits early on.
Yeah, and obviously what she was experiencing, millions of other people were experiencing, and she was just working it out. I mean, we all go through things that are less than ideal, and, maybe we make decisions that we're like, oh, I probably shouldn't have dated that person. That was really hurting me. I should have noticed when I was being hurt or hurting someone else. But that's part of growing up, is like you get hurt, and she was just working out her stuff and in front of all of us, and that's what a songwriter does, or a poet, or whatever it is. You work out these sort of difficult things in front of other people, and comics do it great. Do the same thing. Comedians and that's why like all the time comedians get called like edgy or controversial. It's like, no, it's not controversial. This isn't stuff that you've never thought about. They're just working it out in front of you, mm-hmm. and you're watching them sort of show out. They can, display the inconsistencies, display the hypocrisies, display the difficulties, the pain. Just because you're singing a song about being, brokenhearted by a boy, doesn't mean you're not feminist. It doesn't. It's just you're working your life out, and in a very honest way, in a very vulnerable way. And, hopefully you grow from it, and other people will grow from it as well. And it's such a gift, that these people, that she gave us. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of want to relate my Taylor Swift driving cars theory before we leave the topic of Taylor Swift behind. Are you interested?
Oh, please.
So one thing I've noticed as I've delved deeper and deeper into her discography over the last several years of becoming a fan is, early on, she was never in the driver's seat anytime a car was mentioned in her lyrics. Think about All Too Well when she's sitting in the passenger seat and the guy's looking at her. I think it happens
Love that
too
song.
in Back to December when she talks about I watched you laugh from the passenger side. Like there's all these examples where
Ooh.
she's in the passenger seat. She's always in the passenger seat or she's in the back seat. And then there's a turnaround on Reputation. And it's funny because it's like kind of a perfect, if she is aware of this, which she very, very well might be because she clearly thinks about pretty much everything all the time. It's in Getaway Car, where she has this whole song about, this guy, like she gets into this car with this guy and it's the getaway car to get out of this other relationship. And once again, the guy is driving. And then in the like C section, like the bridge of the song or like but you know what I mean? Like not the bridge, but the part after that where it like is about
Sure.
to go back into the final chorus. There's a change in the lyric and she talks about how she like steals the money and steals the keys and takes off in the getaway car. And for the first time in a Taylor Swift song, Taylor Swift is driving her own car. And then
Wow.
in every song on, maybe not every song, but she mentions herself driving again on Lover and again on Folklore. So now the last couple albums, she has been in the driver's seat.
Wow.
Isn't that
That's
bonkers?
incredible.
I'm so sure that if I ever had the chance to talk to her and I asked her about this, she would be like, oh yeah, I know.
I wonder, you never know. Who knows how much of that is subconscious? I know, like, I'm sure she does think about her lyrics and stuff. I never think about my own lyrics, ever.
Really?
I don't, never. I don't put any critical thought to them at all. I like how they come out and I don't mess with them.
Do you ever make
And
connections
people,
though, where you like write a new song and then like later on maybe you're like, oh, like there was a lyric like that in an old song, but now it's changed in this way. Like, do you ever have those moments?
sure, I'll write songs that, come true later. Where it's like, I'll write a song about a terrible night in Pennsylvania and this happens and it's crazy and then there's this escape plan and this is how it ends up and then like 10 months later I'm singing the song and I'm like, oh my God, that happened last month. That's this. Yeah, or I'll write songs. I'm like, ooh, that was a fun story. Like I enjoyed making that story up, and then a year later, when I could actually be honest with myself, I'm like, what are you talking about? You didn't make that up. That literally just happened. That already happened to you when you were writing the song. It was literally about something you were going through, but you just, I think. It's good to lie to yourself and go, oh, this isn't true. It's just a story, because then you can really open up. Because then there's less at stake. You're not afraid of being judged, and you let go of that sort of judgy, critical mind, which I think blocks a lot of great writing. And that maybe goes back to why young writers sometimes do write better songs when they're first starting out, because they're less critical.
Yeah.
They know less about the technique. They have less experience, so they're just like, I don't know, this is how I feel. Whatever, take it as it is. They're not blocking themselves from the truth of coming out.
Yeah.
So I try to just like, yeah, okay, like, and I wasn't even trying. I was just like, this is a fun song to make up. And then like, yeah, a year later I'm playing that song. I'm like, this is exactly what happened. It's so literal. I can't believe I thought I made it up.
So you didn't recognize your own metaphor in the moment, and then later you were like, oh.
Yeah, I think if you separate life, if you separate it from real life, you're just much more open. Plus, I was writing about someone I knew. It's like, imagine if at the time I was like, oh no, I have to hide these details because what if they hear it and they'll feel bad or whatever it is. It's like, no, I'm just gonna pretend I'm making this all up, and then we'll deal with the consequences later.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, we are approaching the end of our hour, but that's a good place to ask you to, tell us where to find your music. You have a website, right?
I have a website. I think only like people above 85 or booking agents have gone on my website.
I know, it's
but,
funny
yeah,
that I still ask about websites, and then I'm always like, does anybody actually like? I mean, really, just you can search for you on Spotify is the thing to do, but.
Yes, my name is Shlomo Franklin, SHLOMO. Just search me wherever you do the thing, and it's fun. It's I hope that like one day my YouTube will be very distinct. Spotify will be very distinct, and sort of like or Instagram, like depending on where you stalk me, you'll sort of get a different part of the story, and then if you're intrigued, then you'll complete it by going to the rest of the sort of virtual galleries of sorts.
Perfect. And do you have anything in the works right now? Are you doing any COVID recording?
I have nothing in the works because, well, I have a lot in the works, but I'm not trying to push anything out right now. I just feel that for me, this whole mess is like a message to just like work on other things, work on myself, try to be a better person. I'm trying to do yoga and be healthy. And I don't think the world is like right now ready to just like listen to any of my songs and enjoy them, if that makes sense. Like I have nothing to add to this current scenario. It's a very difficult time for a lot of people, so I just hope that people find, financial and emotional stability. And maybe when like the storm clears, I've got quite a few albums that I'm ready to put out. I mean, I have a couple that are already recorded, but I'll put them out at the right time. But actually, what I am working on is I want to start a podcast where
Yay.
I'm taking a. Yeah, I know. I think there aren't enough podcasts in upstate New York, so I admire what you do, and it's just so much fun to talk to people. And so I'm trying to figure out just the technical side and the gear and all that. And once I do, I'm just gonna have conversations with people and put them out there, and because I want to get good. You're already good at podcasting. You're good at talking on the air, Radio Woodstock. So you're good at talking on stage. So I feel like that's a muscle that you're already you've got it. I don't know myself yet. I don't know what it'll be like. So I'm like convinced that I'm going to be quite terrible for some time. So I want to get that over with. I want to start the podcast, get it over with, and then in a year from now or 2 years from now, I'll actually be good.
Yeah, no, just do it. I mean, I think you're going to be a lot better than you think. I mean, this conversation was delightful. It's all pretty much like this. I mean, it sounds like you want to do basically what I want to do, which is just have fun conversations with people. And that's such an easy, low pressure bar to hit. And it's so much, I've said this before on the podcast, but like, it's so much more fun to do this than it was to do radio interviews, because radio interviews, I had to be, focused on just the music. I couldn't really deviate from that. Obviously, the time was a lot shorter. There was time limitations. And I just, I was also representing the station instead of just being myself. So I couldn't swear or, talk about Taylor Swift too much. So, so yeah, podcasting is super fun. And if you need any input or any advice on gear or anything, I did it super easy and cheap, and it seems to work okay. So I'd be happy to share what I did.
Thank you so much. It's so much fun talking to you, and I probably will bug you about gear questions and stuff.
Yeah, please do. Thanks for listening to More Music Please Quarantine Beat. Follow the show on Instagram at moremusic.podcast and check out the website moremusicpodcast.com for new episodes. Questions or comments, email moremusic.podcast@gmail.com. Thanks to DJ Scully, Michael Cadnar, and James Stewart for the catchy theme song you're hearing now. I'm MK Burnell. Talk to you next time.